Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes. I'm the Chief Sales Sergeant here at Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Now, here at Bulletproof Selling, we are firm believers that hope is not a sales strategy. So since day one, 150 episodes later, we've been meeting with people all over the world, folks that are leading sales teams, folks that have been best-selling authors, Hall of Fame speakers, folks that are working with businesses and organizations and sales teams all over the world to make sure that they are removing hope from how they operate, that they don't have to hope that the right resources come along, that they don't have to hope that they'll be in the right place at the right time. And out of every one of these episodes with our guest, we identify where they're seeing their teams and the folks they're working with hope more than they should. And out of every single episode, we build a system with our guest to address that, a system that you can use no matter what you sell, no matter the size of your team, no matter the size of your goals. And the purpose of all of this, of course, is not just so you can sell more. It's actually so you can serve more. And when we talk about service, one area, one industry that is really focused on service is the nonprofit industry. The folks that are out there every single day sourcing the funds to get the right resources in front of the right people at the right time. These are the folks dedicated to service. And what I really love seeing in the nonprofit world is when folks that have a great mindset of service end up joining the nonprofit leadership roles. That's our guest today. Richard Comitz was a Army, what we called in the Marine Corps, NBC officer. This means he was in charge of all of the nuclear, biological, chemical, CBRN. There's a whole bunch of acronyms around this. But this man dedicated his career to making sure that he got out of the Army and didn't stop his service there. Today, he's the Chief Operating Officer of an amazing organization called American Corporate Partners. Now, you hear that name and you think, all right, these people are working business to business. Actually, these are the folks responsible for making sure that the veterans that are separating, that are out there in the world right now, have the right resources to make sure that they continue to be successful so that they can continue to serve more. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome to the show Mr. Richard Comitz, Chief Operating Officer of ACP, American Corporate Partners. Richard, welcome to Bulletproof Selling.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here.
So, Richard, you and I got our boots sandy in the same parts of the world in Iraq. But since then, you've transitioned from military officer to now being the Chief Operating Officer of a pretty amazing organization. Tell us about that journey, what that looked like for you, and a little bit about what ACP does today.
Yeah, I'll tell you that I think my transition was not unlike most people's transition, where you kind of have a lot of high hopes and you think it's going to be easy, and then it turns out to be a little bit more challenging than you might have thought. So I left. At the end of my career, I was teaching at West Point, so I thought, well, I'll just go into higher ed. I did eventually get a job in higher ed, but I found it very difficult. I applied probably to several hundred jobs, thinking that I could be at a certain level, doing a certain thing, and it was hard for me to convince, or I wasn't doing a good job of convincing those people looking at my application that I was the right person to do that. Or I think it was really challenging for them to see what to do with my military background in combination with my academic background. Anyway, I was able to get into a role in assessment and a higher education institution, and then that was in 2019. As we all know, in 2020, the COVID came around, and we started closing down and doing things. And I was in a meeting in which I spoke up about, someone really needs to be paying attention to our response to COVID. And they said, "Okay, Army guy, that'll be you," which ended up being a great kind of career platform for me to bounce off of, because I really was able to consult and shape the response of the university to COVID, getting people back in the classroom safely, and between vaccinations, testing, and all that stuff. And as that started winding down, I became the director of operations for the university, because they realized that I was able to, accomplish things and get things done. And so I got a lot of exposure to different parts of the university by helping out, kind of working directly for the chief operating officer and the president. But after some time, I continually felt this need to serve more, and started looking around to see what else I could do. And I ran into American Corporate Partners, which was looking for some senior leadership. And after I got to know the organization, I was super happy that they invited me to be a senior leader here. And so what we do is help transitioning service members and active duty spouses really trying to get prepared for their next career through mentorship. But I'll let you ask some questions from there. I don't want to talk too long.
Oh, no, that was a great intro. And so for the folks that have been with this show for a while, of course, we usually have on CROs, sales leaders, sales people, frontline sales managers. You're one of the first folks we've had from outside the direct sales industry on the show. But the reason I thought it would be such an amazing fit is because, one, as an operating guide, you have to think in systems. If you're not thinking in systems, then you're reinventing the wheel with every new project, every new employee problem, every new challenge that comes to your organization. So you're responsible in part for managing the people that are getting the funds to keep your organization afloat, to make sure you can continue to serve those veterans and those spouses. Talk to us a little bit about what that role entails as far as the folks that you have out there. I know some of them are directly responsible for fundraising. Some of them are responsible for matching services. Talk to us a little bit about the folks that you manage so that our salespeople get an idea that your role and their CRO's role may not be that different.
Yeah, when we first started talking, Sean, I thought it was pretty amazing for you to reach out and talk with me about this idea, because as we started talking, I realized, yeah, there's so much applicable to what I'm doing to what you're teaching. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here with you. And so I manage a staff of about 75 people. And that kind of breaks out into groups of people where we have a lot of people that are managing relationships between what we call proteges, the mentees, and our mentors. Kind of as case managers, if you will, bringing people into the program. We have people that are reaching out to service members and spouses to let them know who we are and how we can help. We have people, and so this, I didn't mention earlier, this is the service is applied to the service members and spouses for free. We have to have funds to pay for all the overhead and everyone that is working salary and to keep the programs running. So we have people that are specifically managing the relationships between what we call our corporate partners and our team. And then we also have people that actually are out there trying to find foundations or people to be interested in donating funds to our cause so that we can help more people. So that's kind of the layout of how we are. I kind of have an oversight of a little bit of all that. I also would mention that we have a communications component to that, right? Which, whether that be through social media or earned media or stories, where we're, again, trying to tell the stories of our people.
And so there's not a single person in your organization, it sounds like, that is not responsible for outreach in some way, shape, or form. They're either reaching out to the veterans
we had a staff meeting. Matter of fact, yesterday we had a staff meeting, and I mentioned that, like, when you're on the call, when you're talking with people, thinking about who else needs to know is important. So we could have a person talking to a mentor that happens to mention that they're switching companies and they'd like to get more involved or something. So that, that should hopefully make that light bulb of like, hey, that person could be a potential fundraiser for us or a donation in the future, right? So then who else needs to know about that? So that's something that we stress to the team. But you're right. Everyone could potentially be helping in that matter.
And so for the folks that you are serving, and the overhead that you have to fund, at no point does this ever become a tangible product. So a lot of salespeople are out there right now, struggling every day to make sure they're making the calls, filling the pipeline, doing the things they need to do so that they can sell something that eventually gets delivered, even if it's software. That's still a tangible product. It's zeros and ones that you have to give somebody access to. It exists somewhere, even if it's in code. But you're selling something that never becomes a product or a service, and yet you still have to figure out, how do I get someone to turn over money for this? Either because of the feel good, for the tax write-off, or a combination of things. So with the folks that you're managing and the conversations that you're hearing happen every single day, the ones that are for fundraising, the ones that are for reaching out to say, would you like to be involved in our organization, either as a service provider or as a service receiver? Where do you see hope factor in more than any other area? Because you're talking people to people. What is that area that you see just, we're hoping that other person understands this, and how does that hope manifest? I'm really curious to hear this about you.
Yeah, it's funny. I know I don't have any fundraising experience, right? I was in the Army for 23 years. So coming into this role, I never really thought of it as fundraising. But, the hope for us is always that more people hear about us, that more people want to donate to our cause, right? Those are probably the two major things. We want to help more people, and we want more people to want to donate to our cause so that we can help more people. So those are two areas that hope is really involved a lot.
Yep. And so if we're hoping then that people are going to be aware of us, hoping that the people we're on the phone with might already be aware of us, or our job is to make them aware and to be bought into this mission that you're involved in as quickly as possible, which, by the way, is the job of every salesperson in every conversation. You're trying to eliminate that gap as quickly as possible to get this person bought into what you do and the power that that product or service has or could have for their life, for their business. Then it sounds like then the element that really passes back and forth, because I've been on these types of calls with the people at your organization. That's one of the reasons that I was so excited to connect with you and get you on the show, is I have to be able to do this by connecting the most basic fundamental element of human need. And in my mind, that's that relationship. You mentioned that a few times. What is that thing that you find your very best fundraisers, that your very best connectors do that the other folks could all be doing a better job of?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that personal impact, right? And that personal impact is usually through storytelling of some sort. Getting someone to, if they're a potential protege, get them to recognize I could be that success story. I don't have to be in my current, maybe bad situation. But if it's a fundraiser, right? It's one thing to donate to a cause, but it's another thing to see where your dollars are going, where you're changing and impacting someone's life. So the more we can tell the stories that people can kind of relate to and feel, I think the more successful we can be.
Now, this is definitely something I'd love to build a system around, because all the greatest sales conversations I've ever been part of, and I get brought into Fortune 100 companies to listen to sales calls, you'd be surprised how quickly someone that's really good at what they do in sales brings in stories. They've got a whole a quiver full of stories that they know apply to different situations, and as soon as they recognize, hey, a story could work here, that story comes out, they start telling it, and they're really good at telling it in a way that connects with the person on the other end of the line or at the other end of the table. So let's build a system around this, Richard. Now, from our time in the military, we know every new system that we built eliminated a little more hope from our operations.
Yeah.
And I know that's something that you're big on with ACP right now. So in sales, in fundraising, it's the same way. Every new system trims hope away a little bit more. So we're big on acronyms in the military, as you know. Let's use this acronym TRIM to build this very basic system that any salesperson, any leader, any fundraiser could use to make sure that they're applying stories, the right stories at the right time with the right person. Now, this acronym TRIM, we'll start with T. It's the trigger. Just like in the military, we needed to know, hey, I'm preparing for this mission. That's the trigger to make sure I've got my gear at the right time. I'm coordinating transportation assets. I've got good air cover for this mission I'm going on. When do I need to trigger a system to identify the right story at the right time for the right person? Is it before I'm in a conversation? Is it when I learn a little bit about the person I'm speaking with to determine what their needs are? When would you recommend your fundraisers and your mentee finders, I'll call them, identify the trigger for this system? When does that start?
Yeah, I think that it starts with a little bit of research, right? Depending on what you're going after, right? If you're going after a population to make them or to get them to want to be a protege in our program, that's obvious. You can kind of understand where they're at in life. They're looking for a new job. They're looking for a better way of life or be able to provide for their family, right? So that's one thing. But when you get into, say, a new company, a new business type of proposal, or a foundation, I think what comes in, one, you research what they supported and who else they support and things like that. That's very helpful. But then it's also, I think it's very important to start a conversation by listening to the person you're trying to sell to. And I try to tell my people, we have probably 6 or 8 things that, you can kind of have on the shelf, and you got to be able to pull that right thing off the shelf when you hear where they're interested. Because going into a call with this idea that I'm going to tell them what I think they need to know, sometimes backfires.
And so walk me through this thing, because this is something that I've seen a lot of salespeople stumble with. It's pulling the wrong story off the shelf, the one that really doesn't apply. And so first, I'd love to find out, how do I identify which 6 stories should live on the shelf? And then walk me through a little bit how you'd recommend someone identify, all right, it's story B for this person I'm sitting across from, rather than story A or C.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I mentioned, if you can, say, for a foundation, do some research and understand what they support, I think that's helpful. Choosing the stories in which we have, as far as we go, we specialize in the mentorship, right? So the mentorship is kind of our bread and butter. We have kind of sub programs within that mentorship. So it's those sub programs that oftentimes will appeal to certain audiences, right? Where we are talking about, say, working with active duty spouses because they have a certain group of challenges, right? Or we have people that might have had some sort of post-traumatic stress or anxiety, so that type of crowd. You also have just people that are different demographics that you know that you can help them better if you understand their situation. For example, we find that our proteges of color often do much better when they have a mentor of color, right? So something like that is, if we can do that, and that appeals to someone, then that's a win-win for everyone.
I love that. So we have actually moved into the R in trim already, which is making this a repeatable process. And you've given me a couple of good first steps. One is to start by listening, something that every salesperson could do a better job of. But listen for what this person's telling me, what group of user do they fall into? And that way I'm pulling the story that applies to that user group off of the shelf, and I'm executing on delivering that story. And then you mentioned that picking the right story in the right way is good, but I'm curious, how have you seen stories used in the best ways? Is there a flow? Is there a format for the stories that you're hearing? Once I've identified this person is probably going to be a good fit because I've got a story that tells this, the tale of somebody like you that we've been able to help. What's the best flow for a story, have you found?
I think when you start off with a story, you want to kind of, as you started alluding to there, is get it so that everybody's kind of on the same playing field, if you will, where they can relate, where I was there, or I can see where this person or this group of people might need something. And then once they can kind of either identify personally, or they can definitely see that group of people need something, then it starts trying to kind of build that this is where they were at before they worked with our program, and through our program they moved up, and now at the end of our program they're at this higher level, achieving the goals that they set out for themselves, and they're in a better place.
That's awesome. So this is where this person was, this is where they are now. And depending on what you sell, product, service, and depending on the industry, you're going to have very specific examples for what that might look like. For Richard, of course, it's for a veteran that started off in a bad spot. They got the right mentorship that connected to the right resources. Now they're successful. They've got that full-time job and a role they love. They're part of their community again in an active way. They're continuing to serve their country in the ways that civilians do. So that's a beautiful system to be able to line up now. I want to move into the R. We went through the R in trim. Great steps. I want to go to the I. This is something we were firm believers in the military. And I know that as the world continues to change, the economy continues to change, and where businesses decide they're going to allocate their nonprofit donations and their funds, that's going to change as well. So how am I going to improve this system over time? The way that I tell stories, the stories that I select, how would you advise your people that are out there having these conversations improve the stories they select and the stories they tell?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways there. One, I think we evolve our programs a little bit in order to appeal more to the audience, right? For example, we work with a lot of corporate partners. So we've added some things to our program to enhance the benefits to the corporate partnership. So obviously they join us because of their philanthropic endeavors. But if we can help them link up their hiring managers with veterans and spouses that are looking for jobs, that's a win-win for both, right? We also have incorporated things like LinkedIn Live sessions with our corporate partners. Again, it gets the word out about who they are, what they do, so more veterans and spouses think about them as potential employers. But then, so it's an education process for both the corporate partner, but also the proteges that are like, I never even heard of this company, but it could be a great fit for me. So I think, continually looking at our program and our processes. I mean, little things like for us internally, things like probably a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, we were finding that we were having a hard time getting in touch with people. And we realized, some of the younger generation, texting is the way. So we incorporated texting into our steps in order, our contact steps, right? So that way of improving. So looking at the technology, right, that's out there, or just what people are doing pattern-wise and kind of adapting to that. And then keeping the stories fresh, right? We actually have a practice where when our operations associate gets good news stories, that we log them somewhere. And so when someone calls in and says, hey, my mentor, changed my life. They introduced me to this person, that I got a job. We write that stuff down, and we ask them if we can share it. And that way, we don't share last names or anything, but at least that way, when we're talking about a story, we can actually say, hey, we just had Sean, who's a Marine, tell us this story, and this was the impact on his life. So those are some of the things that we do to kind of improve as we go, and constantly, looking at our systems to make sure that we're doing the right things.
And that's something that I think any sales organization could begin doing, whether you're a team of 1 or a team of 100 or even 1,000, is to build a database, an archive of the stories of the way that you've been able to best serve those folks that you're selling to. Just because it didn't happen on your team or it didn't happen to you doesn't mean you can't use that story and better convey, here's the ways that our customers improve their lives, their businesses, their relationships, all the ways that what you sell could support them in their success. So we've got the T, the R, the I. Let's move into the M in trim here, Richard, which is measuring. This is something that as a chief operating officer, I know that you're big on. So what should I use to measure the impact of the stories that I'm making? Is it conversion in your case to funds received? Is it in the onboarding time of somebody that could be a great mentee to get them into the program? What would you measure to really figure out, are we telling stories in the right way to the right people, making the right impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think in this way, there's a lot of different areas in our business that we can do that. Like when it comes to measuring proteges, right? That's truly how many people are actually signing up for our program, how many people are finishing our program. That's a pretty standard. And then we do survey people as they go through the program to see the impact, right? Whether they're getting the help that they needed, where did we help them, and all that type of stuff. With mentors, I think it's not only getting them involved, but then seeing that they want to be more involved, and oftentimes repeating. So after someone's done with the mentorship, we say, hey, would you like to do it again? If we have about a 98% rate of people wanting to do it again, or happy that their business is working with us. So that is another thing that we measure. Now for the stories, I think, fundraising is a lot like sales, right? Sometimes you can say you got to take a lot of shots on goal. Obviously, you not just want to do it. It's not the spray and pray method, but it is also kind of calculated. So I think it is measuring how many, whether it be calls or grants that we get out the door, but then also how many we get, and then getting feedback on those as well to see where we're at. If we did not get them, what was the challenge, and how can we improve ourselves there?
That's a great way to do it. So measure, how many times you were actually able to communicate those stories, which stories you communicated, and did it yield you the result you were after? Did it get that next meeting? Did it get that check signed? Did it get that donation made? So various ways to begin measuring then the effect of the entire process, to know that this is better than the way I was doing it before, which might have looked like winging it. And you and I know that winging it doesn't work on the battlefield. It doesn't work in business either. So Richard, great end-to-end system on selling with stories. how to identify them, how to leverage them, how to use them, how to improve them, and then how to measure success. Well, I definitely want to give people an opportunity to learn more about ACP. I've been both a recipient and a mentor in this program, and I can speak, firsthand to the value that it's had both to myself as a veteran and to the veterans that I've been able to mentor. Talk to us about how we get deeper into your world, how we connect with ACP.
Yeah, so let me tell you a quick story. We're on the story, right? We recently just heard from a protege who gave us an update on their situation. They started with, and we didn't know this as the person was going through it. It wasn't until after they finished their mentorship, but said they started out living in the truck bed of their vehicle. They were eating MREs. They knew after being out of the military that they were, physically not in good shape, not just fitness, but, taking care of themselves. Got involved in our program, got a mentor who really took interest in helping them get on the right path that they wanted to be on. At the end of the story was, he told us this, but then he said, I now just got the keys to my first apartment. It's my dream apartment. Wow. I have my dream job working at a company that I never thought I'd be able to work at. And I'm providing for myself and my family, and I'm on such a great track thanks to my mentor and me being involved in ACP. So that is a super impact. I mean, I don't think people realize that it's not trite to say sometimes a mentor can not only change someone's life, but save someone's life, because we know that when you leave the military, you're leaving everything that you know and you've had, the camaraderie, everything behind. And if you don't get into a good next mission, then you can easily turn towards, alcohol or feeling bad for yourself, or other things can continue and spiral you to a point where, you're in a bad place. And so we're super happy that people can, get that impact. And so we always can use more mentors in our program. We can always.
And you don't have to be a veteran to be a mentor, by the way.
Yes, you don't have to be a veteran. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, and what we ask is for someone to spend about an hour a month with their protege. So it's not a heavy lift. So we can always use more mentors. We're always looking to help more proteges. And obviously, as we mentioned, we're a nonprofit. We work on donations. So we're always happy to accept any donations that anyone would like to give. They can do all of those things through our webpage. It's acp-usa.org. They can go there, and there's a donate button. There's a sign up to be a mentor. There's a sign up to be a protege. So we would love to help more people through any of those means for sure.
Yep. And if you are a leader in sales, there are plenty of veterans that are thinking of getting into the field of sales. So definitely go to ACP's website, sign up as a mentor, connect them with your CFO, who's probably pulling the purse strings on what your organization can donate. This is a worthy cause that helps veterans at no cost to the veterans or their spouses. So definitely do that. And then we'll make sure that we are tagging you on LinkedIn, Richard, so people can connect with you one-to-one there.
Yes, please do.
Any other parting thoughts for the folks?
Yeah, no, that'd be great. Yeah, please do link in with us or link in with me. I'd be happy to share more and get other people involved in helping more people.
Outstanding. Well, if you are catching this on the YouTube channel, make sure you're hitting subscribe. And if you're listening to us, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere that podcasts can be found, leave us a review and let other salespeople know that help no longer has to be part of your strategy. Not on the battlefield and not in business. Richard, thanks for giving back to your country, both with your service in the military and with what you're doing now to help veterans. Let's get out there and make selling bulletproof.
Thanks a lot, Sean.